Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving back into some entitled people stories. Today we compare the stories about entitled neighbors. All three stories start with the same false belief. If I push hard enough or involve the right authority, I'll win. And every single one of them is wrong. Here we go. Our neighbors declared war over our backyard. This whole mess started with something so stupid that if I hadn't lived through it, I wouldn't believe it myself. I live with my family in a quiet neighborhood where most people mind their own business, or at least they used to. Then the neighbors next door decided that our backyard somehow belonged to them, and everything spiraled from there. From the beginning, it was obvious they had a problem with us simply existing outside. They have a large, poorly trained dog that barks nonstop whenever anyone moves within eyesight. Instead of addressing their own dog's behavior, they decided the real problem was us. According to them, our presence in our yard was the reason their dog wouldn't shut up. The solution in their minds wasn't training or supervision. It was that we should stop using our backyard altogether. At the end of May, I installed a simple floodlight near our shed, angled downward, because my brother needed better visibility when he was outside at night. That same evening, the neighbor's wife stormed out and started yelling at my brother like he'd personally attacked her. She shouted that the light was the last straw, even though that was literally the first time she'd ever spoken to him. She blamed the light for making her dog bark. My brother, calm to a fault, asked her, "If I take it down, will your dog stop barking?" She didn't answer. He took it down anyway, hoping to keep the peace. That goodwill was wasted immediately. A week later, they installed 2 security cameras pointed directly into our backyard. Not vaguely toward the fence, not angled at their own property, straight into our yard. We noticed because whenever my brother went outside to mow, garden, or tend to his emotional support chicken, the cameras would visibly track him. We could see them watching him on their phones from the patio. It was unsettling, to say the least. Then the complaints started rolling in. We got a notice from the village ordering us to remove the chicken coop and ultrasonic pest repellers, claiming they were a nuisance. We had never once complained about their dog barking at all hours for 5 years, but they had no problem weaponizing code enforcement against us. When I called animal control about the barking, they told me noise complaints went through the police. I called the non-emergency line, explained the situation, and was told someone would follow up. Nobody ever did. Things escalated into the absurd when my brother was sunbathing in the backyard one afternoon. Apparently his shirt rode up and his butt crack was visible on their camera feed. Instead of looking away like a normal person, they called the police. That wasn't the last time either. When my brother finally snapped and started flipping off their cameras out of frustration, they called the police again. This time, officers actually came out and issued him a disorderly conduct ticket for the middle finger and the alleged indecency of existing in his own backyard. We complained about their cameras. Police told us the cameras weren't illegal. Fine. So I installed one of our own, pointed back toward their side of the yard. Suddenly, cameras became a problem again. Just not when they were the ones doing it. Within a day, they erected a massive privacy tent using cement, poles, and drilled holes without calling Julie 811 or getting any HOA or village approval. To avoid further nonsense, I re-angled our camera back toward our own yard and enabled motion tracking so we'd have proof if things continued. Around this time, I emailed the police chief about the middle finger ticket. An officer later compared flipping off a camera to yelling fire in a crowded theater, which made absolutely no sense. After a brief investigation, they said the ticket would stand. I posted about it online out of frustration, and dozens of people pointed out that flipping the bird is protected speech and that the fire in a theater argument is outdated nonsense. That same day, a cop showed up at our house while no one was home, then called my brother to say the ticket was dropped. Win number 1. Next came the ultrasonic repellers. We used a sound meter, documented that they were under 45 decibels, and moved them farther from the fence. Code compliance cleared the issue in writing. Win number 2. That should have ended it. But instead, the neighbors installed 2 more cameras, 4 total, 3 aimed at our backyard, 1 at our driveway. The HOA's initial denial and ludicrous demands, siding and shingles, revealed how petty power operates. Your victory here wasn't just about a pet, it was a crucial legal and ethical assertion that a person's therapeutic needs outweigh a neighbor's manufactured nuisance. The chicken became their next obsession. My brother has diagnosed depression, anxiety, and mood regulation issues, and a licensed mental health professional provided documentation stating the chicken was part of his treatment. The village allows chickens. The HOA did not. When I requested a reasonable accommodation, the HOA denied it almost immediately, citing community complaints, which translated to one neighbor with too much time. They even claimed the coop needed siding and shingles to match the house, confusing it with our shed. I filed a HUD complaint under the Fair Housing Act. Suddenly, the HOA wanted meetings. After a Zoom call with their attorney and my brother, the chicken was approved. Win number 3. That wasn't the end. The village then decided our 5-year-old plastic shed was suddenly a code violation. No previous complaints, no changes, just a new problem out of nowhere. Fence repairs triggered another showdown. While contractors replaced our existing fence with the same approved style, village officials showed up threatening arrest because we didn't have a permit. HOA approval took weeks, leaving our yard open the entire time. The neighbor even confronted my mother while she was watering plants, telling her we needed to respect them and that their dog had the right to bark whenever it wanted. She suggested we move our shed and chicken to the other side of the yard like she owned the property line. My mom calmly reminded her that respect goes both ways. The final straw came when my brother was walking the chicken along the fence. Our camera tracked him. The neighbor, sitting in their hot tub, started screaming profanity, accusing him of filming them. The next day, they called the police and claimed he was the one yelling. A week later, my brother was served papers. They were filing for a stalking no-contact order. Their evidence was laughable. Cropped clips, a middle finger, a visible butt crack, accusations of spying while they had 3 cameras pointed at us. In court, the judge barely let us speak and issued a mutual order instead. No contact. Dog barking must be controlled. No cameras pointed at each other. No yelling across property lines. Honestly, I'll take it. They didn't get what they wanted, and for the first time in years, their dog is quieter. They tried to bully us out of our own yard using police, code enforcement, and the HOA. Instead, they ended up with legal restrictions and a paper trail that won't disappear. All we ever wanted was to be left alone. Now they finally have to do the same. Using police and the HOA as personal weapons is the lowest form of neighbor drama. After all that effort, all they got was restrictions on themselves and a quieter dog. Sometimes the only way to get peace is to force it legally. And our second story. From porch piracy to prison time. How one neighbor's entitlement cost her freedom and her marriage. I want to start by saying that I already have security cameras, multiple ones. They're mounted properly, they cover my property, and they send alerts straight to my phone whenever motion sensors pick up something unusual. That detail matters because if I didn't have them, I honestly don't think anyone would have believed what happened next. I got home from work later than usual that day, tired but relieved because I knew I had a package arriving. I'd been tracking it all afternoon, refreshing the app like an idiot, and finally got the notification that the delivery truck was just a few minutes away. I stepped outside and waited near the edge of my driveway, mostly because the driver usually has me sign for anything expensive. Sure enough, the truck pulled up and I recognized the driver immediately. He's been on this route for years, knows me by name, and even joked once that my porch gets more packages than a small business. We were mid-conversation, me signing the handheld device, when I heard the familiar sound of heels stomping across concrete. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. My entitled neighbor, the same one I already have a restraining order against, came marching over from her yard like she owned the street. She stopped just short of where the restraining order says she's allowed to stand, hands on her hips, face twisted up like she'd already decided she was angry before she even opened her mouth. "That package is mine," she snapped, pointing directly at the box the driver was holding. The driver looked at her, then at me, clearly confused. "Ma'am, this package is addressed to him," he said calmly. "I can't give it to you." She scoffed. "That's not true. He steals my packages all the time. Give it here." At that point, I stepped in. "It's not your package, and you need to stay where you are." She ignored me completely and took a step closer. I immediately raised my voice, not yelling, but firm. "Don't take another step. You're already right at the limit of how close you're allowed to be." That's when she completely lost it. She stormed forward anyway, screaming, "Because of you, my husband left me. I'm getting divorced because of you." The driver physically leaned back, clutching the package tighter, eyes wide. I just stared at her. I'd heard a lot of nonsense come out of her mouth over the years, but this one took the cake. I said, "No, your husband left because he's sick of your behavior. This has nothing to do with me." That set her off even more. She started yelling incoherently, pacing back and forth, waving her arms while still inching closer. I reminded her again, louder this time, that she was violating the restraining order. She didn't care. She screamed, cursed, and finally spun on her heel and stomped back toward her house, shouting over her shoulder that she wasn't done with this. The driver stood there for a second in stunned silence before shaking his head and saying, "Man, do you want me to stay until she goes inside?" I told him I appreciated it, but she was already retreating. I took down his name and asked if he'd be willing to confirm what he'd just witnessed if needed. Without hesitation, he gave me his contact info and said, "Absolutely, that was way out of line." The moment I went back inside, I reviewed the camera footage, clear as day. Her approaching, her crossing the distance line, her screaming, everything. I called the police non-emergency line and reported a restraining order violation, letting them know I had video evidence and a third-party witness. A few minutes later, while I was still outside calming myself down, I heard her scream from inside her house. It was loud enough that other neighbors probably heard it too. "I didn't break any effing restraining order." By yelling it unprompted, she revealed she knew the police were coming and understood exactly what she was being accused of, demolishing any possible defense of ignorance or misunderstanding. It was the sound of her own guilt echoing back at her. That scream wasn't directed at me, it was directed at the police. The next morning, I went down to check my mailbox. As I was flipping through envelopes, her husband walked over. He looked exhausted, not angry, not defensive, just tired. He's not part of the restraining order, so there was nothing preventing him from approaching me. He sighed and said, "She got arrested last night." Apparently, when the officers showed up, she doubled down. She screamed, argued, refused to comply, and then physically lashed out when they told her she was under arrest for violating the restraining order. That added assaulting an officer and resisting arrest to the list. She was taken away in handcuffs, still screaming that everyone was lying. He shook his head and added, "She called me from jail this morning asking for bail." I told her no. A few days later, I got the official update. The court didn't mess around. The judge reviewed the footage, the witness statements, and her prior history. She was sentenced to 1 year and 210 days total. 1 year for assaulting an officer, 60 days for resisting arrest, 150 days for violating the restraining order. On top of that, the judge was informed that her husband had already filed for divorce. The court ruled that the divorce proceedings would resume only after she completed her sentence. Upon release, she wouldn't be coming home. She would be transferred to a next of kin residence and placed under an ankle monitor until the divorce was finalized. All of this started because she thought she was entitled to a package that wasn't hers. Some people never learn boundaries until the law physically puts them in place. And our last story. My wife tried to sell our house from under me. For 15 years, I genuinely believed my marriage was solid. Not perfect, not storybook, but solid in the way that actually matters. We raised our kids in that house, we painted the walls together, argued over furniture, fixed leaky faucets at midnight, and buried pets in the backyard. It wasn't just a building to me, it was the physical record of our life together. I never once thought I'd come home and be told it was being sold out from under me like an old couch on Craigslist. The day it happened felt strangely quiet, too quiet. I walked in from work, dropped my bag by the door, and immediately noticed my wife, Sarah, sitting at the dining table with her hands folded in front of her. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She looked finished, like she'd already moved on in her head and I was just catching up. "We need to talk," she said. That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. Then she followed it up with, "The house is listed. The first showing is Monday." I actually laughed at first because it sounded so absurd. "Listed?" I said. "What do you mean listed? We never talked about selling." She shrugged, barely looking at me. I decided, the house is in my name. I've already made arrangements. That's when something old and ugly clicked into place. When we bought the house, our lawyer suggested putting the title solely in her name because she was a first-time buyer and I wasn't. It saved us on taxes. At the time, it felt like a harmless technicality. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? We were married, we were a team, or so I thought. I felt panic rise up, hot and fast, but underneath it was something colder. Anger. Not explosive anger, but the kind that sharpens your focus. I asked her what her arrangements were, and she simply stood up, said she was going out, and walked away like she just told me the weather forecast. The moment she was gone, I started digging. I found the listing online within minutes, professional photos, bright lighting, our family home stripped of anything personal, photographed while I'd been away on a business trip. That alone told me this wasn't impulsive, this was planned. I called the listing agent, pretending to be a potential buyer. I asked a few casual questions, then said, "Is the current occupant an issue?" "Oh no," the agent said cheerfully. "That's just the owner's brother. He'll be out by closing." Her brother. My hands started shaking. I wasn't just being pushed out of my house, I was being erased. I went to the document safe where we keep important paperwork, passports, birth certificates, insurance documents. The folder that should have had our marriage certificate was empty. What a crazy lady. She rewrote history. You went from husband to brother, from partner to occupant. Taking the marriage certificate wasn't just theft. It was an attempt to delete the legal proof of your union, turning your entire life into a ghost story before the ink was even dry. That was the moment panic turned into resolve. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to be polite. I was going to protect myself. I called my friend Mark, someone I've known since before my marriage, and told him everything. My voice cracked despite my best effort to keep it steady. When I finished, there was a pause, and then he said very calmly, "She can't do this. It doesn't matter whose name is on the deed. That's the marital home. She's got no legal right to sell it without your consent." He connected me with his sister, Linda, a family law attorney. Within an hour, I was on the phone with her, pacing my living room. She listened without interrupting, then laid it out clearly. "First, secure the house," she said. "Change the locks if you think she might let strangers in or remove property. You live there. You have every right to be there. Second, I'm filing a lease pendens first thing in the morning. That freezes the property. No sale, no refinancing, nothing. Third, we'll file an emergency motion with the court." I changed the locks that night. When Sarah came back and realized she couldn't get in, she lost it. She pounded on the door, shouting that I was insane, that I had no right. I stood on the other side and told her calmly that the sale was stopped and she should talk to a lawyer. Then I walked away from the door. The next few days were a blur. Legal filings, phone calls, silence in the house that felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. The realtor called me directly, apologetic and nervous. The showings were canceled. The listing came down. Court moved faster than I expected. Linda presented everything, the listing, the agent's statement about the brother, the missing marriage documents. The judge didn't hide his irritation. He granted me exclusive use of the home pending divorce proceedings and issued a formal order restraining Sarah from selling, refinancing, or encumbering the property in any way. Sarah didn't look at me once during the hearing. Standing on the courthouse steps afterward, I felt a strange mix of relief and grief. I'd saved my home, yes, but I'd also lost the marriage I thought I had. There was no fixing something like that. You don't come back from being treated like an obstacle to be quietly removed. The divorce is still ongoing. It's messy. It's exhausting. But the house is still standing. Still mine to come home to. And I learned something I wish I hadn't had to learn this way. Trust doesn't mean surrendering your sense of self or your rights. Let's line these three stories up. In the first story, the neighbors try to erase OP using every system they can reach. Cameras, police, HOA, court filings. The more they escalate, the more they expose themselves until the law steps in and forces silence on both sides. In the second, entitlement skips subtlety entirely. She ignores a restraining order, lies, screams, and assumes proximity equals ownership. The system responds once: jail, divorce, confinement. The third is quieter and more dangerous. No yelling, just paperwork and quiet manipulation. But the moment facts replace narratives, the illusion dies. Authority doesn't go to whoever grabs it, it goes to whoever can prove it. So guys, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a new video every single day. Thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.